Hey, what's up, Internet? My name is Neil Parfit. If you don't know me, welcome to my incoherent ramblings. If you do know me, you know that it's been a minute since we last talked, which was maybe 4.5, 5 months ago. Since then, I completed 2 seasons of 2 different TV series, started and finished 2 more, and now I'm on 2 more seasons of TV. So if any of you in post-production know, once you're on a series or something like that, it's sort of a black hole of all your time, and that's literally exactly what happened. And I'm up for breath. Here we are. The last few days in the audio world have been pretty interesting because one of the longtime developers of audio processing plugins decided to change their entire structure to 100% subscription, and people have gone absolutely bananas. Is it overblown? Maybe, but just seeing them getting destroyed on social media, on all their channels, by everybody at large, on all the forums, oh, it's kind of terrifying how fast the mob can turn because they are one of the most respected developers in the game because they were one of the first to do it. And anyway, just a little bit of history. Waves plugins are one of the first pieces of software I ever bought. And I'm medium age, so going back to 2000, my grandfather had passed away and left me some inheritance money. And I'm an audio music guy, so what did I do? I bought stuff. And the first things I bought at that time was Sonic's Foundry Soundforge, and then Logic Audio 4 at that time, which was like $1,700, ridiculous, and Waves Gold Power Pack, which was I think $1,400. So I've had this stuff and used it for almost 23 years, and that was starting at version 4. Now I think we're at version 14. I've honestly lost count. And at that point, the authorization scheme was, I believe it was challenge and response with these random words, or maybe it was serial number. If anybody remembers, let me know. I literally can't remember that far back because 20 years plus COVID is like 50 years. Can't remember, but besides the point, they had an authorization scheme. You could use it with your system and just get to work. Cool. Over the years, they've introduced like 200 more plugins, it seems. They've gone through different structures of authorization. It went from that initial kind of strategy to using a physical iLock key to their own portal system. And throughout it, it just got more and more confusing with like a million different bundles and sales almost every day of the year. It just got to be like sort of convoluted and messy. Not a fan, but you use the tools you need. You don't buy the tools you don't need. Now it's going to be an all or nothing scenario where you pay a monthly or yearly fee to get everything. My personal opinion is it's not the money per se. It's the idea of feeling cheated. And I'll get into that in a sec, because if we're being real for a second, if you can't afford $250 a year in a business to run the software you use every day, you're not running a good business. So here's my take on the whole thing. Agree or disagree, that's fine. When you buy a new piece of software, that doesn't mean it should work forever for free with every system that comes out in the future. That's not a good business model for anybody because software development is like a game of moving targets. You create this thing for this thing, and if that thing changes from a new type of hardware or CPU, and I've seen this happen, PowerPC to Intel to now Apple Silicon, it takes manpower to rejig the code so it works with all this new technology. And you can't just buy one thing once and expect people to fix it for all time. That's not how things work. But most people in the audio business are slow movers. You buy the thing, you use it for a long time. It could be years before you need to upgrade to the latest thing. And in that time, you're using it, doing your thing, and not just sending money out into the void. And that's the problem with all these subscription models. Even if you don't change anything, you have to keep sending the money to renew that key so it will still work. So that's the issue. It's basically a force of hand to take your money even if nothing's changed. Even before the subscription model came out, I was thinking, you know, I've probably bought the same plugins from Waves 10 times over. Like, some of these plugins are pretty much the same as they were 20 years ago, but I've had to update them constantly with all these changes of systems. So I was already kind of like out of pocket, paying all this money to have the right to use this stuff. And then all that's abandoned, and now it's just, you know, a low amount of money for everything on a renewal basis. So inherently, I think people just feel a little cheated out of their money, even though they technically never owned the thing, you know? It'd almost be like buying a CD for your CD player, and then years later, when you go to listen to it, your new CD player is like, please insert $1 for this CD to work. It's not kind of what we signed up for initially, right? And I understand that these companies want to go to these subscription models, so they have this constant cash injection to keep paying for things and new R&D and just to make money because they are a business, which is fine. But they already had the Waves update plan that you'd pay yearly. The optics of it were just totally different. People still felt like they owned the thing, you know? So I think this is all about optics, and they just deployed this terribly, giving users no choice. It was just this crossroad thing. It's one way or the other, take it or leave it, and that will always leave a sour taste in people's mouths. So there can be a darker side to this. Think of a few years ago when Trump gave that executive order to stop doing business dealings with Venezuela. All of a sudden, Adobe, who does Photoshop and a lot of other apps, had to basically cancel their cloud subscription stuff, which is the only way you can use their software, on an entire country. So imagine you're just some pleb going to work that day, going to open Photoshop to do your work, and it calls home and doesn't work. And that's exactly what happened to an entire country because the user doesn't own the key to use the thing they bought. Instead, it's kind of a remote yes or no kind of situation. And that kind of stuff really puts me at unease. And I have had that happen to me directly. Well, not Trump giving me an executive order, but I recently got screwed by a cloud service, and partially my fault, but it just goes to show the position we're in. So I use Avid Pro Tools, love it or hate it, whatever. And I thought I had my iLock with me when I hopped on a plane to go to LA, and I was going to do some work on the way there. And while I was on the plane, I realized I forgot my iLock, which meant I could only use their cloud authorization system, and the Wi-Fi didn't work on that flight, so I couldn't use the software I've paid for that entire flight. And I was pissed. And wouldn't you be, right? And this is after I've given this company probably over $100,000 since 2009. Still being held hostage by a cloud service I have no control over, even though I've given them all my money, you know? It's just this sour feeling that you're just getting screwed even though you're giving them all the funds. And granted, the cost of these cloud things aren't that expensive, but it's almost like these streaming services. One by itself isn't a lot, but you start adding up the 10, 20, or 40 different services you want, all of a sudden it's a pretty decent expense a year. And if you're in business, that's fine because you can write it off, but it still feels like you're getting screwed. Maybe it's just my old ways complaining about stuff and it's the internet, so I have to complain, but I don't like subscription services. Even though it's cheap and affordable, I still want to pay money and have a thing and know that that will work, and that's it. So in conclusion to my ramblings, software developers, you have to take note of the fiasco that's happened. Customers want to pay to play, but on their own terms, without that ticking clock hanging over them, demanding more money every month, every year. That's going to force people to find a different solution, and that solution will be them not giving you money. They'll be giving it to somebody else. And do you want that to happen? Probably not. That's not good business. Anyway, aside from all this, I hope everybody's doing well. It's been a while, as I said before, and I have some exciting stuff coming through the pipeline that I'll share soon, but not yet. Happy afternoon from the icy north of Canada. See ya.